Peace and blessings. This is Raisa Kiwala, the divorced Muslima coach. Today's verse from the Quran comes from chapter 39, verse 53. Tell them, O Prophet, my servants who have transgressed against their own souls by committing evil deeds and sins, not to despair of Allah's mercy. Surely Allah forgives all sins. He is most forgiving, most merciful. I just love this verse. There's so many verses in the Quran that I love, but particularly I love this because it allows us and gives us permission to embrace our humanity, to embrace our humanness, of being perfectly imperfect, of being flawed, of being all the things that Allah tells us in the Quran about the nature of insan, the nature of human beings, to be forgetful, to be impatient, to want some immediate gratification versus delayed gratification. All of this is part of our human nature, right? And the beauty of being in Ramadan right now is that we are learning to discipline parts of ourself, parts of our nature that are, if left unchecked, if left to follow their whims and desires, we would be in trouble. Like, we would not be thriving, we would be miserable, and we'd destroy ourselves and our lives. We would destroy our dunya and our akhirah. So what do I mean about embracing your humanness, your human design? Is that we all make mistakes, we all sin. That's the reality and the fact. And this is so important, because when we can accept this, we don't see it as a problem or an issue or something wrong with us, because we're accepting our nature, we're accepting the design by the designer, right? So when we accept this, understand this, embrace this, the way we're going to approach course correcting and starting over is going to be very different. It's going to be a difference between falling into hopelessness and despair and optimism and hope. Okay, so right, this, in this particular verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet, to the people around him during their time, they had their own issues just like we do, because they were human just like we are, right? They weren't perfect. They were striving all the time, constantly making mistakes and sins, just like we do, right? And everybody sins in a different way. So Allah is telling us, don't lose hope. Guess what? You're human. All you got to do is come back home, come back to me. And what does Allah tell us in that verse? That He is the most forgiving, the most merciful. So if you're looking for unconditional forgiveness, unconditional mercy, that is the only place that you're going to find it. Because how many times can we make mistakes with people in our life, whether it's loved ones, whether it's at work, it's out in the world, and people choose not to forgive us for whatever reason. They're not able to forgive us, and there becomes a barrier between you and that person, a wall that gets built up. And however, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that's not the case with our relationship with Him, that we do get a free pass, meaning like we get to wipe the slate clean when we turn back to Him, when we go back to Him looking to find forgiveness and mercy unconditionally, right? Yes, there are parts of repentance and tawbah that I'm not going to expand on here. It comes with the territory, but Allah is telling us in the Quran that that's where you're going to find that. So then you can give that to yourself. You can let go of your the sin or the mistake that you've made, whether it was intentional or unintentional, right? And you can start again. You can refresh. You can course correct over and over and over and over again, right? Because that's what we do. We make mistakes all the time in one form or another. So to be able to offer it to yourself, to be able to surrender and give that permission to yourself that, hey, I'm human. This is okay. This is part of my design. There's nothing wrong with me. And I have a source. I have a way out. It makes you feel like you're never alone, right? And then, being conscious of what are the thinking that's happening underneath that is stopping you, that is creating a barrier for you to access that source. Because we all get that self-bashing, self-berating, harshness, judgment on ourselves, and we freeze, and that's a lot of self-loathing. That Allah didn't create us for that, right? He gave us a way out for that. And then when we're in those dark spaces of despair, guess what? Our clear known enemy that sometimes we even forget about is going to take advantage of us, is going to spread more whispering into our mind, causing us to go farther away from Allah, making us feel like we're not worthy enough of going back to that source with, making a mistake, okay? And that is why it brings me back again to having consciousness of yourself, your self-awareness, your consciousness, which will help you to have that level of God consciousness that we're all trying to strive for in this month through our fasting, right? So every day you have an opportunity to rise with taqwa, not just in Ramadan, but every day thereafter. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.